Hello and welcome to another video from Auto Night, and in this video I'll be replacing the offside rear window regulator on this 1 Series BMW. This car has been brought to me with a window that had dropped down. It started up here and it's gradually over the course of a couple of days dropped down into the door. It's no longer connected to the mechanism, so it's very likely this car will be needing a new regulator. So I begin by removing this small cap here, which reveals a Phillips screw. Let me remove the screw. Next, using a screwdriver at first, we very carefully lever off this trim. Both these screws need to be undone, and these are T20 Torx. The door trim is held on by a series of clips around its outer perimeter, and it needs to be pulled off to release these. Sometimes they break because the plastic gets brittle. Once it's released, it's then held in along this top edge, which is the seal. It needs to be released from there by lifting upwards. And it's free. There are some things to detach from behind here. There is the cable that goes from the lock to the inner handle. There's just a little clip on the edge of there and it just unclips. And then there is the electrical connection to the electric window switch. It's going to be a little bit hard to see, but with the help of a screwdriver, and the connector block comes free. The door trim is now off the car. This here is a foam membrane and it's sealed around its outer edge by a very tacky mastic. And this needs to be sealed because it prevents water that passes this seal from getting into the interior of the car. Water should naturally pass this seal, bypass this and come out through the bottom through a series of drain holes. If this is breached in any way, it can let water into the car. It's quite a common water ingress point on cars in general if this has been disturbed and not resealed properly, or if it's just on some cars it's a plastic sheet, and cars where it's a plastic sheet it can just deteriorate over time and split. So we need to remove this carefully without damaging it around its outer perimeter, and then that will give us access to the mechanism that's inside. I'm releasing the mastic from the door. It's actually coming off intact, so it will probably reseal to a degree again. It's coming away quite nicely. Excuse me sniffing, it's a really cold day. It's making my nose run. That's the door foil or the door membrane that's come off in one piece, which is excellent. Now, you get the first look inside the door. Here you have the motor, and here you have the mechanism. I can immediately see that there's a problem because between this motor and the mechanism is a cable. It's cable operated, and I can immediately see that this cable here has broken. which will be the reason why this mechanism has failed and the glass has just dropped down. So the good news is I have this part already here. I've ordered a second-hand one off eBay, a genuine one, because they are extraordinarily expensive new from BMW, and the companies I usually use, where I get a lot of my parts from, don't supply them as an aftermarket product. So I got the part for 16 quid. It's an old car, it makes sense to do it this way. The owner of this car has been quite lucky because sometimes these door window glasses can just drop down when the mechanism fails, and they just drop down into the door and smash in the door, and we have to hoover up all the bits and replace the glass as well. So the fact that it's failed this way is probably quite good. You can see the glass is here, stuck in the down position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this glass and I'm going to tape it in the up position with some masking tape which doesn't leave too much residue, and then I can commence work on this mechanism and change it out. In order to free the glass from the mechanism so the mechanism can be withdrawn, there is a clip that we must release, and in order to do this we need to get the glass up so that that clip is level with this slot here, and once it is, you can then see the clip that you must push in with a screwdriver, and then you can release the glass. I will try and get this on camera. In there is a green clip. That's the clip that needs to be released. You can see the hole where that clip passes through the glass. That's all that actually holds the glass to that clip, which in turn is part of the regulator mechanism. Turning our attention again to that slot, if we raise the glass up again, you will see when it comes into view. And there we are. I now need to press in this clip while lifting the glass. And it's free. It's important to put this tape on so that the window doesn't drop down and smash. We can now remove this mechanism from the door. First thing we do is we remove this electrical connection here. The window regulator mechanism is held in place by 3 mounting points. 1, 2, 3. They're 10mm nuts. I remove those. This should leave the mechanism free to be removed. Okay, so now's a good time to compare the old component here on the left with the replacement on the right. I have managed to work out exactly what's happened here. In the bottom of the door was this small piece of plastic, and this piece of plastic is part of this, and this cable here should remain in this part here. What's actually happened is this piece has given way, broke off, and allowed that cable to become detached. So this piece here, breaking off of here, is the root cause of the problem. Now the new one's intact, so I'll swap the new one over. You'll see on the new one that the cables are taut as they should be, and everything's in order. Whereas the old one, the cable is slack and it's broken off from here. These sorts of things are quite common. These parts are plastic, they are fairly fragile, especially as plastic ages and becomes brittle. Bit of a lousy design. I'll minimise the risk of this happening again by lubricating this with white grease throughout. All the pivot points I'll lubricate, which will release the load a little bit. It won't be such a tight mechanism, which will hopefully help prevent that from happening again in the future. Okay, so it may look a bit of a mess, but nobody sees it where it is. So these surfaces where this slides are all lubricated, the cables are lubricated, and the pivot points here and here. So that gives it the best chance. The new mechanism can now be fitted back into the door. nuts all back in, so we just refit the 3 10mm nuts. And tighten those. Refit the electrical connection, and now we can lower the glass into position, and it will snap and click back into that clip on the green bracket there. That noise you just heard was it re-engaging. The window is now attached to the mechanism. At this point, before we reassemble the door, it actually makes sense to refit the electric window switch and just test this. So I've taken the electric window switch out of the door trim, just plugged that in there, and I'm going to just put the ignition on, and we'll just test this window before we finally put the door trim back on. Saves taking it off again if something wasn't right. And everything works as it should, all the way down, all the way back up. Once again, just to make sure. All good. Before we put the door trim back on, we'll refit this membrane. In order to know where it refits, there are a couple of screw holes that you can line up, which gives you an idea of where it should be. You can also see the outline of the mastic from before. The mastic remains tacky, so as you can see, this is okay to be used again. Had that mastic have gone hard and wasn't capable of resealing, you would need to pick it all off, which is a joyous task, and use new mastic, or just order a new one of these if time is more important to you, as it is in my case. But that, as you can see, has sealed really well. I'll just go around that one more time. We can now put the door trim back on. It's important to reconnect the two things that we disconnected. It's also important to remember that this gets positioned through the hole here, as this is the door lock plunger. I transfer this seal across to the door from the trim because it's easier, but do make sure that these clips line up with the cutouts in the door trim first before you try and refit, or it will be a devil to do. So that should now line up and clip back into position up the top. Now you just need to strike it to re-engage the clips. We are running out of light a bit, so we need to just do up these and two. Place the screw in here. Refit the electric window switch, which is done. Refit the trim, which is just push fit. And refit the screw cap. The job is now complete. And the electric window works perfectly. Well, that's it for today's video. We did run out of light again, which is a bit frustrating, but this time of the year it's a bit unavoidable. Hope you enjoyed the video. Do feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you, and goodbye.